You know, there's this highly specific and just deeply uncomfortable moment that I think everyone listening to this has experienced.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's like you're staring at your screen, it's late at night, and you're doing the final review of a project. Or, maybe a presentation you have to deliver the very next morning.
Right, the classic midnight panic.
Exactly. And, you've done all the research, you understand your topic perfectly, you are really just trying to polish the delivery.
Sure.
But then you start reading your own slides, or maybe your script, and this slow, creeping dread just kind of washes over you.
Oh, I know exactly where this is going.
Because you suddenly realize that you have described every single point, every single slide, every single piece of data with the exact same word. I mean, everything is just important.
Yeah. It really is a uniquely isolating kind of panic, isn't it?
It really is.
You read your own writing back to yourself, and suddenly, it feels like you're looking at an optical illusion. The word just starts to lose all meaning.
Semantic satiation, right, where it just sounds like noise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you realize your entire argument is resting on this one incredibly flimsy linguistic pillar.
Yeah, it feels like temporary amnesia, like you've just, suddenly lost access to the rest of the English language.
Right.
And that deeply relatable, highly specific panic is exactly what we are unpacking today. We're doing a deep dive into a short, but honestly incredibly focused guide on elevating academic and professional English.
And it's a great guide.
It really is. It comes from a text titled Van Banduk Dan, and the core focus is this breakdown called 5 Ways to Say Important Like an Academic.
Which sounds so simple, but the implications are huge.
Huge. Because our mission today is to look at how true fluency, like that effortless, sophisticated grasp of a language, it doesn't actually come from being wordy.
No, not at all.
It doesn't come from swallowing at the source and spitting out these massive 5-syllable words. It comes entirely from precision.
Which, is a fundamental shift in how most people approach the whole idea of improving their vocabulary.
Yeah. How so?
Well, the natural instinct, right, especially when we feel insecure about our writing or speaking, is to just add more.
Oh, totally. We pad it out.
Exactly. We think complexity equals intelligence. We think if we use a bigger word, we sound smarter.
Right.
But this material argues the exact opposite. It argues that we don't need a higher volume of words. We just need a far more rigorous selection process for the basic ones we already know.
But I want to challenge that natural instinct just a little bit, though.
Sure, go ahead.
Because on some level, important is a really highly functional word.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it gets the point across. If I tell you, hey, a meeting is important, you show up.
Right. It does the job.
So to get into why this guide argues so strongly against it, let's look at the central story the text uses to frame this whole issue. It introduces us to a university student named Mia.
Right, Mia.
Yeah.
And Mia is essentially the avatar for anyone who has ever had to present complex information under pressure.
Yep, we've all been Mia.
We really have. The scenario is exactly what you just described earlier. So she's prepping for a major presentation, she's reviewing her slide deck, and she hits that exact wall.
The wall of important.
The wall of important. Every single slide relies on it. This point is important. That data is important. This next step is highly important.
And so she actually takes us to her professor. And what stood out to me when I was reading the source wasn't just that the professor corrected her, but, how he corrected her.
The reaction is key here.
Yeah, the text specifically notes that he smiled.
Right.
Like, he didn't scold her. He didn't tell her that her research was flawed or her ideas were bad. He smiled, and he delivered the core thesis that we're looking at today, which is academic English needs more precise words.
And that reaction, that smile from the professor, it's incredibly telling.
Because he's seen it before.
Oh, 1,000 times.
Yeah.
He smiles because he recognizes the trap. He has likely seen this exact linguistic bottleneck from, 1,000 different students over the years.
Right.
So he isn't judging her intelligence at all. He's really just diagnosing a mechanical failure in how she's transmitting her intelligence.
A mechanical failure. I like that phrasing. And let's actually pause on the mechanics of that failure, because I think it's way too easy to just write this off as a student being lazy with her vocabulary.
Oh, it's definitely not just laziness.
No, and if I'm perfectly honest with you, I still do this all the time.
We all do.
Yeah, I'll be drafting an email to a client or, mapping out one of these deep dives, and I'll catch myself leaning on these broad catch-all terms.
Right.
So if important is so widely understood, like we agreed earlier, why does it completely undermine a presentation? Like, is there a cognitive reason we all default to these vague terms when the pressure is on?
It absolutely comes down to cognitive load.
Mm.
And it's really vital to separate this from laziness.
Okay, break that down for me.
So when you're constructing a high-stakes presentation, your brain is juggling an immense amount of complex processing.
Right, you're looking at the data, the audience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're synthesizing raw data. You're trying to structure a compelling narrative. You're anticipating the audience's counter-arguments.
Yeah.
And on top of all of that, you are managing the baseline anxiety of public speaking.
Which is huge for a lot of people.
It's massive. So the cognitive demand in that moment is just astronomical. And in those moments, the brain ruthlessly searches for shortcuts to conserve energy.
It looks for the path of least resistance just to, get the thought onto the page.
Precisely. And in the English language, the word important is the ultimate path of least resistance.
It's just so easy.
It is. It's a semantic safety net. It's universally understood. It's practically never grammatically incorrect in a sentence that's assigning value. And it requires basically zero mental friction to retrieve from your working memory.
You don't have to think to use it.
Right. Your brain grabs it because it is safe and cheap, cognitively speaking.
But the cost of that cheap word kind of gets passed on to the audience, doesn't it?
That is exactly what happens.
Because if I tell you my slide is important, I haven't actually told you why you should care. I've just demanded that you care.
Yes.
I'm basically forcing you, the audience, to do all the mental heavy lifting to figure out the context.
That is the perfect way to frame it. You are offloading the cognitive work onto the listener.
Right.
And that is why the professor's intervention with Mia is so critical. He is implicitly telling her that her underlying ideas have merit, but the vehicle she is using to deliver them is completely flat.
The vehicle being the word important.
Yes, academic rigor, or professional rigor for that matter, it isn't just about the quality of the raw data. It is entirely dependent on the precision of the vehicle carrying that data to the audience.
Because a vague vehicle delivers a vague message, no matter how brilliant the underlying research might be.
Exactly. It's like having $1 million racehorse and transporting it in a broken-down pickup truck.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
The cargo is incredible, but the delivery mechanism makes it look cheap.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of fixing the problem. Because the professor doesn't just offer this vague critique to Mia, he actually gives her a highly specific toolkit.
Yes, she does.
The text outlines 5 pillars of precision. Basically 5 distinct alternatives to important, and they are categorized strictly by their context.
And what's crucial here...
Oh, nice use of crucial.
Thank you. But what's crucial is that the guide doesn't just treat these words as interchangeable synonyms.
Right.
It treats them as distinct operational tools. If you open a standard thesaurus, you're going to find all 5 of these words clustered together under the exact same broad heading of important.
They just look like 5 variations of the same thing.
Right. But the guide strips away that ambiguity and assigns a very rigid, specific utility to each one. It forces the speaker to categorize the actual nature of their idea.
Let's actually break those down, because this is where the theory becomes highly actionable for anyone listening.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, so the first alternative the text provides is essential. And the specific parameter for using essential is when something is absolutely necessary.
Right. It sets a baseline requirement for existence.
Yeah, and when I was reading this, I was trying to map this out in a way that didn't just feel like, reading a dictionary definition on a deep dive.
Right, that can get dry.
Exactly. So I kept coming back to the structure of a recipe. Let's say you're baking a cake.
Okay, baking a cake.
If we use the guide's parameter of absolute necessity, essential is the flour.
Oh, okay.
Because without the flour, the structure cannot hold. It doesn't matter what else you add, right? You can add the best chocolate, the most expensive vanilla extract. Without that specific component, the flour, the thing fundamentally, cannot exist as a cake. It is an absolute non-negotiable requirement.
That analogy perfectly captures the binary nature of the word as the text defines it.
Binary, right?
Yeah. Essential implies a zero-sum game. If you remove the essential element, the entire system collapses or just fails to materialize entirely.
There's no middle ground.
Exactly. It's not just a nice-to-have addition. It is the structural integrity itself.
But then you look at the second parameter the text provides. The guide offers the word crucial.
Right.
And it dictates that crucial should be used when one decision can change everything. So if essential is the flour, crucial isn't an ingredient at all.
It's an action.
Exactly. It's a turning point in time.
It's the moment of execution.
Yes. Crucial is the exact moment you decide to take that cake out of the oven.
Oh, that's good.
Right. The flour is essential for it to exist, but the timing is crucial to determine the actual outcome. That one specific decision is the inflection point between a perfectly baked cake and a burnt, inedible mess.
So the stakes are entirely different there.
Completely different.
And you'll notice how the text is categorizing these concepts. It's not by their dictionary definitions, but by the dimension of time and the dimension of stakes.
Yeah, explain that a bit more.
Well, essential describes a static structural reality. The flour is always flour, but crucial describes a dynamic temporal reality, a turning point. When you're presenting an idea and you describe a moment as crucial, you're signaling to your audience that they need to pay attention to a specific variable that holds the power to alter the entire trajectory of the project.
That is a massive distinction.
It really is.
Like if Mia is standing in front of her class and she points to a slide and says, "This policy is essential," the audience understands it's a structural requirement.
Yes.
But if she says, "The timing of this policy is crucial," the audience instantly understands there's a window of opportunity that could close.
Exactly. And she hasn't added any extra sentences.
Nope.
She just used the word that carried the correct underlying architecture.
Which is so efficient.
Yeah.
And that leads directly into the third tool the text provides, which honestly operates on an entirely different axis.
And that one is
Significant.
the guide is extremely specific here. It ties significant directly to research findings or meaningful results. It essentially anchors the word in data.
Yes, empirical data. And I really want to push on this one because out of all 5 words, significant feels like the one people abuse the most in just casual conversation.
Oh, without a doubt.
You're like, we say someone has a significant other, or we talk about spending a significant amount of money.
Right. It just means a lot in casual speak.
Exactly. But the text is fencing this word in entirely around empirical evidence. Why is that distinction so important, or wait, so crucial in an academic or professional setting?
Well, it's because in those environments, authority is derived from evidence.
Okay.
If you go back to your baking analogy, you wouldn't say the decision to take the cake out of the oven is significant.
Right.
Because that implies a statistical measurement of the decision itself, which just doesn't make sense.
It sounds weird.
It does. But if you ran an experiment where you baked 50 cakes at 50 different temperatures to find the exact optimal heat for moisture retention.
Okay, now we're doing science.
Right. The data you gather from that experiment is significant.
It carries empirical weight.
Precisely. When you use significant in a professional presentation, you're subconsciously signaling to your audience that you aren't just giving an opinion. You're pointing to measurable, verifiable results.
You're saying, look at the numbers.
It tells the listener, I have the data to back this up. If Mia calls her survey results important, it sounds like she just personally likes the results.
Like they're important to her.
Yes. But if she calls them significant, she is actively claiming empirical validity.
That makes so much sense. Okay, so we have essential for absolute structural necessity, right?
Right.
And we have crucial for high-stakes turning points.
Right.
And significant for data-backed findings.
Correct.
That brings us to the fourth word, which honestly feels a bit more abstract to me. Fundamental.
Yes, fundamental.
The guide assigns fundamental to basic principles or core ideas. But how are we differentiating this from essential? Because, I mean, a core idea feels like an absolute necessity.
They are closely related, definitely, but they operate at very different depths.
Depth?
Yeah. Think of it as the difference between the materials used to build a house and the laws of physics that keep the house standing.
Oh, okay. So essential is the concrete and the wood.
Yes. The materials are absolutely necessary. They are essential to build that specific house. But fundamental refers to gravity.
Wow. Okay.
It refers to the basic principles of load-bearing architecture. In an academic context, a fundamental concept is the bedrock theory upon which everything else is built.
So it's bigger than the specific project.
Exactly. If a student is writing a paper on economics, understanding supply and demand isn't just an essential part of the paper. It is the fundamental principle of the entire field.
Right.
When you label an idea fundamental, you're telling the audience that if they do not grasp this specific concept, they will be entirely lost for the rest of the presentation.
You are basically setting the ground rules for the entire conversation. You're saying, look, this is the bedrock. We all have to agree on this before we can even move to the next slide.
It establishes the paradigm. It's a very commanding word to use in a presentation because it confidently establishes the boundaries of the discussion.
Which leaves us with the fifth and final word from the professor's toolkit. And I feel like this is the one that really escalates the tension.
Oh, absolutely.
Vital. The text specifies that vital should be used when something is necessary for success or survival. And that word survival, I mean, it completely changes the temperature of the room.
It raises the stakes to the absolute maximum threshold.
Yeah.
This is what separates vital from everything else on the list. Essential means the process needs this to work. Vital means if this specific element fails, the entire entity dies, either literally or metaphorically.
It implies a living system that is actively under threat.
Exactly. I mean, look at the etymology of the word itself. It traces back to life.
Right. Vitality.
Right. In biology, we don't talk about essential organs. We talk about vital organs.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that.
And in a corporate boardroom, a CFO might talk about a vital injection of cash to keep the company from going bankrupt.
Because the company is dying.
Yes. It's not just an important financial move. It is the literal lifeblood keeping the organization alive.
Right.
When you use vital in a presentation, you are bypassing the analytical part of the listener's brain and tapping directly into their sense of urgency, their sense of self-preservation.
That is a wildly powerful tool to just kind of leave sitting on the table while you default to the word important.
It's a huge missed opportunity.
Just look at the sheer range of nuance the text is mapping out here. The guide is basically forcing a structural audit of your own thinking.
Yes, an audit. That's a great way to put it.
Because when you look at your slide deck, you can't just gesture vaguely at the screen anymore.
No, you have to interrogate the nature of your own argument.
Right. You have to look at the bullet point and ask yourself, like, wait, is this a bedrock principle we're building on? Okay, if so, it's fundamental. Is this an inflection point where a decision has to be made today? Then it's crucial.
Right.
Am I showing them the results of our Q3 survey? Well, that's significant. You are diagnosing the anatomy of your presentation.
And this, right here, this is the hidden brilliance of the professor's advice to Mia.
How so?
Because the act of choosing the precise word actually clarifies the thought itself.
Oh.
When Mia just wrote important on every slide, she wasn't demanding much of her own intellect. She was allowing her analysis to remain blurry.
Because important covers everything.
It covers everything and nothing. By forcing her to choose between essential, significant, crucial, fundamental, and vital, the professor is forcing Mia to understand her own material at a much deeper, more rigorous level.
That makes total sense.
The vocabulary upgrade isn't just window dressing. It acts as a stress test for the ideas themselves.
Because if you can't figure out which of those 5 words applies to your point, you probably don't fully understand the point you're trying to make.
Precisely. If everything is just important, then nothing really has priority, and the entire presentation is just a flat line of information.
So we have this theoretical toolkit now. We have the diagnosis of the problem, and we have the 5 specific instruments the guide provides to fix it.
Right.
The natural question is, what happens when this theory is actually put into practice?
The moment of truth.
Exactly. And the text actually gives us the resolution to Mia's story, and it highlights a massive shift in how she is perceived by her peers.
The resolution is simple but highly revealing. The text notes that Mia updated every single slide.
She did the work.
She did. She went back through her presentation, removed the vague repetition, and applied the specific, nuanced vocabulary based on the exact context we just discussed.
And the immediate aftermath is what, to me, makes this entire deep dive worthwhile.
Yeah, tell them what happened.
So after the presentation, her classmates approach her. But they didn't compliment her research, and they didn't say, her ideas were revolutionary. The text specifically highlights their feedback. They told her, your English sounds much more academic.
That reaction is the crux of the entire guide. Because the audience didn't perceive a change in the data. The data was the same.
Right, the research didn't change.
What they perceived was a change in the authority of the speaker.
The authority, wow.
The presentation sounded smarter, it sounded more rigorous and more academic, purely because of intentional vocabulary curation.
And the text follows this up with what I think is its most powerful and arguably its most provocative lesson. It explicitly states, sometimes sounding smarter isn't about using more words. It's about choosing the right one. Replace one ordinary word and your English can sound like a C1 speaker.
It completely dismantles the myth of what fluency actually looks like.
It really does. And let's actually unpack that C1 reference because I think that's a really critical benchmark here.
Absolutely.
For anyone listening who might be unfamiliar, C1 refers to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. It is essentially the gold standard for advanced, highly proficient fluency. It's the level where you aren't just communicating basic needs, you are mastering the nuance and subtlety of the language. So my question for you is, are we really saying that the secret to being perceived at that elite level of fluency isn't about memorizing the most obscure polysyllabic words in the dictionary?
It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does. Is it really just about ruthlessly auditing the simple words?
If we look at the psychology of communication, yes. That is exactly what the text is arguing, and the psychology backs it up completely.
Okay, lay the psychology on me.
There's a pervasive paradox in how we think about advanced communication. We assume that to sound intelligent, we need to sound complex.
You want to sound like a textbook.
Exactly. We think we need convoluted sentence structures and highly specialized jargon to prove that we belong in the room. But the hallmark of a true C1 speaker, or really any highly effective communicator, whether they're a native speaker or not, is intentionality and control.
Control. I really like that word in this context. It implies you aren't just, throwing vocabulary at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah, exactly. When an audience listens to a speaker who relies on filler words or repetitive, vague adjectives like important, they subconsciously recognize a lack of control.
Oh, interesting.
It signals that the speaker is at the mercy of whatever word happens to float to the top of their stressed-out brain in that exact second.
It feels accidental.
Right. But when a speaker uses a word like crucial to describe a timeline and significant to describe a data set, it signals absolute, deliberate control.
It tells the audience, I chose this specific word out of 10,000 other options because it is the exact tool required for this exact moment.
And that intentionality instantly translates to authority in the minds of the listeners. That is exactly why Mia's classmates perceived her as more academic.
Because academic is just a proxy word for intelligent, rigorous, and trustworthy.
Yes. She didn't add 20 minutes of new content to her presentation. She didn't inflate her word count. She simply swapped out a blunt instrument for a precise one. And it fundamentally altered how her intellect was judged by her peers.
It reminds me, honestly, of the difference between how people approach fashion.
Oh, how so?
Well, you have someone who owns a massive warehouse full of clothes, right?
Yeah.
Thousands of different items. But they just throw things on randomly, and they always look a bit messy.
Sure.
Their wardrobe is huge, but their execution is just chaotic.
Right.
But then you have someone who owns a capsule wardrobe. They only own maybe 10 pieces of clothing, but every single piece is perfectly tailored, the fabrics are chosen deliberately, and they always look impeccably put together.
That is an excellent way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
The guide isn't telling you to build a massive warehouse of vocabulary. It is offering a capsule wardrobe for your intellect.
A capsule wardrobe for your intellect. I absolutely love that.
It fits perfectly.
You only need a few tools, but you need to know exactly when to wear them.
And it proves that linguistic knowledge is most valuable, not when it is vast, but when it is applied with surgical precision.
Which is an incredibly empowering takeaway for anyone listening to this deep dive.
It really is.
It completely democratizes the idea of sounding authoritative. You don't need a PhD in linguistics to command a room.
No.
You don't need to spend hours memorizing a thesaurus before your next board meeting. You just need to cultivate a slight pause, just a moment of friction before you reach for the default. Easy word.
It requires mindfulness, not necessarily a larger vocabulary. The tools are already in your toolkit. You just have to stop reaching for the same one every single time.
So just to synthesize this whole journey we've been on today with Mia and her presentation panic,
Let's recap.
we started with a pretty universal problem, the cognitive trap of the repetitive, vague safety word. We unpacked why our brains love the word important when we are under stress and how it actively harms our authority by offloading all the contextual work onto our audience.
And then we explored the 5 specific context-driven tools that text provides to solve that exact problem.
Right. We looked at essential for the absolute structural necessities. That's the flower and the cake.
Right.
We looked at significant for the empirical data-backed findings. We examined crucial for those high-stakes turning points and decisions in time. Taking the cake out of the oven,
Yes.
we mapped out fundamental as the underlying bedrock principles and theories, like gravity. And finally, we discussed vital for those maximum stakes survival level scenarios.
And the overarching lesson from that entire framework is that precision in language forces precision in thought.
Say that again?
Precision in language forces precision in thought. It clarifies your own argument before you even present it.
And when you present that clarified thought, you unlock that C1 level perception. You demonstrate the intentionality and the control that an audience inherently trusts.
Exactly.
So for you listening right now, here is the immediate practical application. The next time you are prepping for a major meeting or drafting a project proposal, or honestly, even just writing a high-stakes email that really needs to cut through the noise, do a quick audit.
Yes, an audit.
Look at your own slides or read through your draft. Do a search, literally Control F for the word important.
Treat it as a warning light on your dashboard.
Exactly. When you find it, pause. Look at the context of the sentence, evaluate the actual stakes of what you're trying to say, and run it through the 5 pillars. See if you can swap it out for something sharper. Find the exact tool for the exact job.
And I can guarantee that the recipient of that email or the audience in that room will notice the shift.
I will.
They might not be able to articulate exactly why your presentation felt more compelling, but they will inherently perceive you as a more rigorous, authoritative voice in the room.
Which leaves us with one final and honestly slightly unnerving thought to mull over as we wrap this up.
Oh, what's that?
Well, this guide expertly demonstrated just how much invisible damage the single word important was doing to Mia's perceived intellect.
Right, it was sabotaging her.
It actively diluted her authority without her even realizing it until the very last minute. So it forces you to wonder if upgrading just one ordinary default word can so radically transform how an entire presentation is received by a room full of peers. What other invisible everyday filler words like good, bad, big, or very are secretly undermining our perceived expertise in every single conversation we have?